Hey everybody, Adam here to give you another video update for the Astrobase Command Kickstarter. Before we jump into talking more about species creation today, I just want to take a moment to say thank you again to everyone for your support. We've been working really hard to try to spread the word about the campaign, and it's just been really encouraging to see people not only backing us, but also coming to talk to us on the Discord, giving us encouragement everywhere on social media, and reaching out yourselves also to spread the word with us. All right, so let's go ahead and jump into some species creation.
Alright, so anybody who's ever played an RPG before is going to recognize a lot of elements here. So you can specify the name of your species, you can decide on statistical strengths and weaknesses that they'll have, as well as edit their physical appearance. So in RPGs you would do this for a single character, but in Astrobase Command you're doing this for your entire species. So before I get into what I'm doing here and what it means for gameplay, let me back up a little bit and explain why we would want this feature in the first place. So it was really important for us in Astrobase Command in general to not only be able to provide unique challenges, but also to be able to give players the tools to sort of define their own fantasy for a space station dwelling civilization in terms of how they look and how they play. But we also wanted to make sure that we were able to provide enough variety that every playthrough felt unique and memorable. For characters specifically, what that means is that they have to be able to have a whole range of physical appearances, as well as different kinds of stats and traits. And so we knew right off the bat that we wouldn't be able to design every individual character ourselves. So we knew we were going to have to use some kind of procedural generation with some randomness thrown in. So the purpose of species creation as a tool is basically to guide that randomness so that you are creating a species that feels like it has a cohesive identity, where each individual is unique, but they still have this kind of shared ancestry with the rest of their crew. So let's start by giving our species here a name. So we'll call them the Baccarinos, which I now realize sounds like something that Ned Flanders would say, but there are only so many jokes you can make about Kickstarter backers, so there you go. And then you will go ahead and assign some points to these stats. So characters themselves are represented statistically with three things: stats, skills, and traits. We'll dig into these a little bit deeper in a later video about characters and their life cycles, but at the species level you have the ability to control their core stats, which are body, mind, and spirit. So you can think of these as sort of consumable resources that every character has, and how much they have of a given resource is just how high this number is. And they use these over the course of a day to perform different kinds of actions, which are body, mind, or spirit focused. And they recover these things over when they go to sleep at night. So a body-focused species would be a species that focuses on things like we're really good at things like manual labor, security, and survivability in combat. A mind-focused species would be great at solving complex problems, science-based jobs, and strategizing in combat. And finally, spirit-based species would be prioritizing morale over everything. So they want to build strong relationships, and they would tend to try to diffuse conflict to avoid it entirely. So there's also the diversity stat here, which isn't something that characters themselves have, but they're basically your way of controlling how much variety there is within your species, both statistically and in terms of their physical appearance. So let's say, for example, our Baccarinos. I don't know what our backer situation is in terms of body, so I'll give you a few points there. But, you picked our game, so I'm going to say that the mind has to be pretty high. And your community spirit has been amazing so far, so let's go ahead and max that out. And we'll put the rest of this into diversity. So what diversity does is basically the more points that you put into this, the more an individual will tend to vary from the species average that you've specified up here. So let's say that we created this spirit-focused species with a relatively high diversity. We might have individuals that would have 10 or 30. What this means, and number crunchers will have picked up on this, is that if you sacrifice points out of your point pool to put this into diversity, even though your species average stats will be a little bit lower, because you're going to have this greater variety, it means that you're going to have a more balanced crew. So, maybe a spirit-focused species here might have people who have abnormally high body or mind, and so those people would be really good at certain kinds of jobs. Whereas low diversity means that you'll have a lot of points in your species average, but you're going to create a very highly specialized species. So that's really up to what your playstyle is. Okay, so like I said before, also diversity affects physical appearance, so let's take a look at that. Alright, so we control the physical appearance of our species using the appearance wheel, in which you can basically author 3 different portraits. So let's say, for example, I can do things like modify skin color and hair color and so on, as well as move some of these sliders for things like face shape and so on. And basically an individual could have any appearance along this wheel, which is basically a combination of the portraits that you have created. So this is a representation of what that would look like on a particular point on that wheel. What we're doing here with the needle is basically saying where the average appearance would be for your entire species, and this sort of white gradient that you see here fading out along the arc of the circle describes how much your diversity allows you to reach these points further along the wheel. And so, for example, this is what it looks like with a diversity of 8, but if I was to say sacrifice some points in body to bump this up to 14, now all of a sudden this arc is actually reaching out a little bit further. So very high diversity means that you would be seeing characters that have appearances using all 3 portraits. And that's really up to whether or not you want to create a kind of species that has this very, very clearly defined look, or if you want to be able to see a variety of people. Alright, so I think that's it for species creation for today. Obviously, if you have any questions, feel free to put them up in the comments or to reach out on Discord. And I'll see you soon in the next video update.